What's up YouTube? It's LEGO King 71, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down the entire 2-year-long build process of this incredible 4.5 foot tall Dragon Knights themed LEGO castle MOC. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I've been making update videos of my build progress, highlighting some of my building techniques along the way. The finished MOC used around 38,000 pieces, including over $4,000 worth of brand new LEGO pieces that I bought from LEGO Pick-a-Brick and Bricklink. In this video, you'll get to see how I built a cave with a functioning elevator lift and lights. You'll also get to see me break down how I built a fully detailed castle interior, including a blacksmith shop, soldiers' barracks, a dining hall, a throne room, king's chambers, a sacred garden, a dragon guarding the castle's treasury, and so much more. Even the side guard tower has a fully detailed interior. And let's not forget about all the details in the ocean surrounding the castle, including multiple cargo docks, a shipwreck, a goblin trading ship, and even a fishing hut. There's so much to talk about with this MOC, so let's get right into it. I'm starting by building the rockwork below the castle. But before I can start on the rockwork, I needed to decide on a layout and the total size of the MOC. When I started this MOC, I used 4 base plates arranged in a square. Each one of these base plates were 32 by 32 studs, making the total dimensions of the 4 base plates 64 by 64 studs. You'll see in future videos that the MOC will grow twice in size as I expand the castle. My initial idea was to build a castle on top of a rock island, and I wanted there to be ships in the ocean surrounding the island. So of course, if there's ships in the MOC, then there would also have to be a dock, and I wanted the dock then to lead into a cave that had an elevator to take minifigures and their cargo up into the castle. I wasn't sure what I was going to do past this point, but this was enough for me to get started building. To begin, I'm using dark gray slope bricks to create the rockwork in a circular layout on the base plates. As you're watching me build in this time lapse, you may notice some differences in the coloration between some of the bricks that I'm using. This is because I was using a combination of my childhood accumulation of bricks, which used an older LEGO plastic formula, combined with a brand new Pick-a-Brick order with about $120 worth of LEGO bricks, using a different, newer dark gray plastic formula. Overall, I actually don't mind the mismatching shades of gray, and I think it adds a cool looking texture to the rockwork. As far as my actual building technique, I used a mixture of high angle slopes, inverted slopes, and snot bricks to attach low angle slopes to, making the studs face horizontally. Snot, for anyone who hasn't heard this term before, is an acronym that stands for studs not on top. I'll be using this term a lot in my future videos. Unfortunately though, this building technique, combined with the large irregular size of the rockwork, resulted in an extremely delicate rock wall. For now, I just had to build extremely carefully, but I found my adult hands were extremely difficult to fit between the bricks without knocking over or breaking all the progress that I had made over the past hour. Here's some footage played at normal speed showing how slowly and delicately I'm having to put the pieces together. I knew this problem would be fixed later when I connected the mountain into the castle wall in a future video, so I wasn't worried about the fragility of the wall in the long term. Next, I began to build the cave walls leading from the dock to the elevator. Here, I used the structurally sound building method of a 2-stud deep wall because I knew this was going to be the main structure supporting the castle. But this was looking a bit boring, so I decided to add some torches lining the cave walls. Here's the design I came up with for the torches. The torches consisted of a dark gray 1x1 brick modified with studs on 4 sides, 2 1x2 cheese slopes, 1 2x1 flat tile, a black torch piece, a snot brick then to connect the torch to the cave wall, and then 1 headlight brick. The headlight brick is important because it has a square hole in the back of it, and this will allow me to easily add flickering LED lights to the torches in a later video. Here I'm putting together all 6 of the torches I needed to line the cave. And lastly, you can see here I'm adding the torches to the cave walls. You can see I added a metal gate in front of the elevator and filled in more of the cave wall above the torches. today's update, I'm starting by adding an LED light kit to the torches that I built last week. I found the kit on brickstuff.com for about $60. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, when I first unpacked the kit, the number of wires and circuit boards was a bit intimidating, but it turned out to be very simple to put together actually. The wires easily clicked into the circuit boards, as you can see here. I found that the LEDs themselves are pretty bright, especially considering their tiny size. They easily fit through the square opening in the back of the headlight bricks. Another cool feature was that the circuit board and switch also have holes cut into them so they can be directly attached to the studs on standard Lego bricks. Unfortunately though, the battery box doesn't have any such connection points, so I just built a small Lego box to secure it to the base plate and prevent it from moving around inside the space between the cave and the outer rock wall. Here's a quick time lapse of me finishing the wiring. I turned off the studio lights in the room to try and give you a better idea just how bright these LEDs are. In this next clip, you can see the cave ceiling is built now. I constructed it using a combination of 2x3 inverted slopes and 2x2 inverted slopes. The difference in angles between the pieces helped me avoid creating a ceiling that looked too uniform and unnatural. Overall, I think this turned out quite nicely. Now that the lighting and ceiling were done in the cave, I began designing the wooden platform for the elevator. My idea was to have the sides of the elevator car be lined with these toothed pieces, which would then allow the elevator to be lifted by Technic gears. I used snot bricks to achieve this. The snot bricks also added a lot of additional structural support for what would otherwise be an extremely fragile elevator car. It was extremely important that the elevator was structurally sound due to all the moving parts and the large amount of friction that was involved. Here's a time lapse showing me finishing the first prototype of the elevator car. Now that that was built, I began building the walls of the elevator shaft around the car. In this clip, I'm adding the main gears which will power the elevator. These are 24-tooth Technic gears. I reinforced where these gears were attached because the combination of the weight of the elevator and the friction of the elevator were too much for the walls to handle otherwise. This clip is a perfect example of the friction causing the elevator to get stuck on the slight imperfections of the Lego bricks that were making up the walls. I was able to resolve this problem later by designing roller wheels to roll against the walls rather than having the platform rub directly against the walls itself. You can see how much more smoothly this is working now. As I built the elevator shaft higher, I continued to add more rockwork around it. Because of how delicate it was important that the rockwork did not directly touch the elevator's moving parts. In this final time lapse, you can see me periodically testing the elevator to make sure the rockwork isn't interfering with it in any way. Let's start the tour off where we left last week with the elevator. This part of the castle was by far the most complex to build so far. The elevator works by simply turning this gear on the backside of the MOC. You can see I added some openings here so you can more easily see the elevator moving inside. An added bonus to these openings was that it added some additional detail to the back of the MOC, and it also allowed for more light inside the first floor. One thing that I was afraid of with the elevator was that because of all the moving parts, something might break inside and I wouldn't be able to reach to fix it. To resolve this, I decided to make the entire castle above the elevator removable, giving me access to not only the elevator, but also the gate mechanism. Here you can see I used a series of pulleys and a string connected to the gate on one end and a wooden crank on the other. The crank you see here on the left is connected to the upper gate. The right crank is connected to the lower gate. In front of the gate, a guard with a spear and shield is posted, and above him you can see the Dragonite crest above the main gate. Outside of the gate is the stable. Here, guests can store their horses while they are staying at the castle inn. You can see a stable hand feeding an apple to one of the horses. The entrance to the castle inn can be accessed via these stairs to the right. One goal I had while building this castle was to make the entire thing realistically accessible. One of my biggest pet peeves is when LEGO sets have watchtowers with no way for a minifigure to get up to them, or even worse is when there's a staircase that's only 3 studs wide, meaning that no minifigure can actually fit on the stairs. This means that every part of the MOC has staircases, hallways, and ladders that allow minifigures to access every part of the castle. You'll see more of this as I continue a tour of the MOC. Although this added an entirely new set of engineering obstacles to overcome, it was something I have rarely seen done with other castle MOCs, so I wanted to challenge myself to do this. Now, getting back to the castle inn, you'll notice I built it to resemble medieval timber frame buildings. The light tan color is meant to resemble thatch. You can see I've incorporated the green Dragon Knight theme on the flags that are mounted in front of the inn. On the ocean-facing side, there's even a wooden balcony for guests to enjoy the view. Another thing I wanted to do with this MOC was build fully detailed interiors. In order to see inside, we can simply pull out the wall and reveal a bed, a nightstand with a candle, and a chest for travelers to store their belongings in. Moving on to the front of the castle, there's a lookout point with an archer and a staircase leading to the second level. Past the staircase is a hallway leading to a bridge that connects to the cargo dock. You can see here I've used the same torch technique for these torches as the ones in the cave. On the cargo dock, you can see a dock worker with a bucket and a mop cleaning all the fish guts that have been spilled onto the dock. Here you can see all the cool details I've added, like fishing nets, oars, and other various barrels and crates. There's also a sign posted showing the price of some of the goods. On the back side of the dock, you'll notice this massive shark someone has caught. The shark came from the Creator Series 3-in-1 pirate ship set, and I think it looks awesome here. There's also a little boy fishing on the back side of the dock, but I think he'd be in trouble if he hooked anything like the shark hanging behind him. From the dock, minifigures can use the tower to reach the castle. Past the guard and the door, there's a ladder inside the tower leading to the bridge. Here you can see a dock worker operating the cargo crane that allows them to lift heavy boxes of goods onto the bridge and then take them into the castle. Here you can see I use snot bricks to attach these brown 1x6 plates to and create this wooden support beam look at the base of the crane tower. The crane itself rotates 360 degrees and it has a ratcheting crank that prevents the cargo from falling as it's being pulled up. Flipping this lever over allows the crane hook to be lowered. Let's begin with the front side of the MOC. Here, you'll notice some of the cool details I added to the walls, like the gray minifigures and vines that are meant to resemble decorative stone carvings. I also decided to add arches lining the top of the wall to help break up the monotony of all the gray pieces and add some depth. Moving on to the inside of the MOC, I began building this walkway that overlooks the center of the castle. Archers that are posted here can rain down arrows on any intruders that have broken through the main elevator gates. From this view, you can also see the stairs which lead from the main level to the second level and then wrap around to continue to the third level of the castle. As I mentioned in the previous video, having stairs to realistically connect every level of the castle was one of my main goals in building this MOC. These time lapses show me completing the castle walkway for the third level of the castle. Here, more archers will be posted to defend the castle from invaders. In this clip, I'm finishing the castle wall around the castle inn. Moving on to the back of the castle, you can see that the corners are angled at 45 degrees, which added even more complexity to this already complex build, so I'm going to break down the technique that I used to achieve this. First, I started with these 45-degree angle modified plates at the very bottom of these corners. This was connected on one side and then just rests on flat tiles on the other side since the 45-degree plates don't actually line up with the studs. Next, I used snot bricks and a 2x4 gray tile to hide the dark gray part of the modified plate that was showing on the outside of the wall. After that, I built up the walls, but you can see that this still left some gaps at the corners. To resolve this, I used snot bricks facing towards these gaps and then attached 1 stud wide plates lined with 1x2 cheese slopes. This perfectly fills the gaps and provides even more depth to the tower walls. The next time lapses show me building the walls of the castle that are facing the cargo dock. In this section of the wall, I wanted to have an opening for 2 reasons. 1, this would be another great defensive position to guard the castle from intruders coming from the cargo dock bridge. And 2, this would also allow people viewing the MOC another way to see inside the center of the castle. Moving to the very back of the castle, I began by tiling the section above the elevator because I wanted this part to still be removable. You can see I left a few studs exposed so that this section will still be stable when it's attached, but it's still easy enough to remove. Then I built the floor to match the shape of the opening using various gray plates. After that was done, I began building the window bay of the great dining hall. I made this section removable like the castle inn wall so that it's easy to access and view the interior of the dining hall as well. Speaking of the interior, that was the next thing I started building. I began by building the fireplace and the dining table. Then I started building the stairs that led from the dining hall to the 3rd floor of the castle. You'll notice in this time lapse that I built the stairs with a seam in the middle. I needed to do this in order for the section above the elevator to remain removable like I mentioned earlier. When the MOC is put together, the seam is relatively unnoticeable though. In this next time lapse, I'm adding some detail to the wall facing the center of the castle. You can see I experimented with a few different options to cover the studs, but ultimately I settled with this piece, which I think looks fantastic. Finally, I finished this part of the build by completing the ceiling of the dining hall and attaching a golden chandelier to it. I began by working on the shipwreck so that I could build the island around it. On this part of the MOC, I cheated a little bit by starting with an official LEGO pirate ship set. My idea was to use this as a base and then later deconstruct it to look like a weathered shipwreck. I'll be modifying it in a later video, but for this update I'll just be building the ship exactly as the instructions specify. After that, I began creating the island. I used a mixture of dark tan and light tan plates to represent wet and dry sand. This is different than the other island I created because I wanted there to be a beach on this one rather than a dock. Next, I started building the rockwork of the island cave. My idea was to have the shipwreck spill treasure and gold onto the inside of the cave. I finished building the rest of the rockwork around it and the shipwreck. Around the same time, I also took advantage of the pick-a-brick wall at one of my local LEGO stores and bought a bunch of pick-a-brick cups full of 4x6 plates to cover the multicolored base plates. Buying the plates from the pick-a-brick wall is significantly cheaper than ordering them online, but unfortunately these were the only size of blue plates that my local store had at the time, so I wasn't able to fill all the smaller gaps yet. In this time lapse, you can see me starting to build a castle tower on top of the island. I also built a path into the rocks leading from the tower down to the shipwreck. The bridge is the next part I built. The bridge is 6 studs wide with tiles lining it to resemble wooden planks. I used a series of arches to make the rails of the walkway on the bridge more detailed. Another detail I wanted to add were support beams below the bridge. Here's how I built those. Once I had these built, I attached them below the bridge using snot bricks. Finally, I finished the railings with more tiles to cover the remaining studs that were exposed. After that, all that was left to do was add the roof tiles and the bridge was done. I decided to extend this area so that minifigures can walk around to the mouth of the cave and also so that I can add a ladder leading down from the shipwreck to the beach. You can see here that I layered tan plates on top of each other close to the rocks to make it look like there was sand piled up by the crashing waves. Next, I started to deconstruct the pirate ship to look more like a shipwreck. The reason I chose this set rather than other pirate ship sets that LEGO has made in the past is because this one is one of the few that didn't use giant molded pieces to make up the whole of the ship. Instead, this ship uses an array of smaller pieces which allow me to deconstruct it in a more detailed way. First, I removed the 2 large tan plates that made up the bottom of the ship, and then removed more pieces to hollow out the left side of the ship. Then I replaced the tan plates with 1 stud wide brown plates of various sizes to make it look like wooden planks that had been broken off. Since I removed the tan plates on the bottom of the ship and replaced them with brown pieces to resemble planks of wood, I decided to tile the top side of the ship with brown plates as well. To further sell the look of broken wooden planks, I used snot bricks to attach more brown plates at various random angles to make it look even more chaotic and destroyed where the damaged part of the ship is. At this point, the hole in the side of the ship began to look kind of like an explosion of gunpowder that was set off from within. Since the ship was red, it could be a warship belonging to the Red Lion Knights faction, the arch enemy of the Green Dragon Knights. Unfortunately for the Lion Knights, it doesn't look like the Dragon Knights took any prisoners. As a finishing touch, I added 2 ladders made out of these brown 1x4x2 fence pieces combined with 1x6 plates that I then turned vertically. Moving on to the castle tower on the island. After last update, I needed to start expanding the tower outward as I built higher so that I would have more of an area to work with when building rooms on future floors. So to accomplish this, I used a combination of inverted slopes and arches to gradually build outwards and also add some great texture and detail to the tower. Once the tower reached the height of the bridge walkway, I began building the wooden platform to connect the two together. Again, I used 1 stud wide tiles to resemble wooden planks. I even used 1x6 tiles and these round pieces to create an angled railing. Beneath the wooden platform, I used the same tiles along with some snot bricks to create support beams. Then I went back to building the floor of the tower, making sure to leave an opening for the ladder leading to the bottom. Next, I added these black double doors. Finally, as you can see here, I used snot bricks to attach these black cheese slopes and create an awesome looking shingled roof above the doorway and the lookout balcony. In these first time lapses, I was finishing the bottom of the 3rd floor. I used mostly large bricks to build this part because they're a lot more stable to build on than plates. However, the corner here was a little more complicated to build, so I was forced to use angle plates with bricks underneath them instead. You can see in this clip that I took off the modular dining room portion of the MOC while I was building the corner so that I wouldn't accidentally connect the seam between the 2 separate parts. On the other side, I used some angled bricks on the corner rather than an angled plate. Now that the floor was complete, I started working on the blacksmith shop. First, I wanted to add a fortified defensive position for archers on this corner. So to do this, I used angled plates with the inverted slopes connecting to the bottom of them to look like a wooden platform with angled support beams. To provide cover for the archers, I attached 1x4 brown tiles vertically using snot bricks. I offset these tiles by half a stud by taking advantage of these 1x2 plates that had holes in them. These holes are what allow the half stud offset and make the wood planks a lot more natural looking than if I had just built them straight across. You can see in the time lapse that I wanted the walls to have a similar look to the wooden frame building technique I used on the inn that I built in a previous video, but this time around I wanted to add more texture, depth, and angles. One way I accomplished this was by attaching these quarter arches to snot bricks to create a curved wooden beam look. I also used smaller quarter arches to make a detailed textured window bay. On the front of the blacksmith shop, I decided to have it match the castle stone and act like a stone foundation of the building. I built some wooden support beams here and attached a 2x4 blacksmith shop sign above the entrance using a snot brick. I then used tiles to line the top of the wall so I could make the level above removable. I used plates in the same color to make the floor of the next level. Here's what the finished interior of the blacksmith shop looks like. Moving on to the throne room, I began by lining the bottom with tiles so that this section of the castle would be modular and removable as well. Next, I built the floor and placed a spiral staircase. You can see I used these angled bricks as walls for the staircase because they fit flush with the curve of the stairs. You can also see here that I added some hinges to the front of the throne room. In the next video, I'll be building walls on these hinges that will fold outward and allow me to access the interior of the throne room. To make the room more elegant looking, I tiled it with a mix of sand green and earth green triangle tiles. However, in the next update, I'm going to replace this pattern with a different one because I didn't quite like how this one turned out. On the exterior of the throne room facing the front of the castle, I decided I wanted to go for a detailed stone carving look. So to do this, I used these gray vine pieces along with some arches. Moving on, I began building the soldiers' barracks above the blacksmith shop. On the back wall, you can see that I placed a ladder leading up to this level. To the left of the ladder, I built some beds. On the top bunk, I added these half-length chain pieces that will attach to the wall as supports for the beds. In these clips, I placed some minifigures in the room so I could get the right scale for the size and height. Once the furniture was in place, I began building the walls of the building. I used some inverted slopes and snot bricks to avoid having a flat, boring-looking wall here. I experimented with a few different ideas when building the window bay on this level, but here's what the finished window looks like. I love the curved brown tiles that I used to create the arch above the window. Then, when the walls were finished, I built the roof of the building using a similar technique to the one I used on the roof of the bridge in a previous video. The roof simply rests on top of the walls, allowing for easy removal and access to the room. Here's a look inside the finished barracks. In the corner to the right of the ladder, I built a barrel with a faucet as well as a table. You might remember in my last video, I said that I would be redoing the tiling pattern in the throne room. So that's what I'm doing in this time lapse. First, I made a new pattern on a 10x10 plate and used this as a template that I could reference when I was building the pattern on the floor of the throne room. At this point, I decided that I wanted the front of the throne room to have a grand balcony overlooking the ocean and an opening that would allow me to see inside. To get this elegant look, I decided to use these 2x2 rounded bricks to look like pillars similar to the ones in ancient Greek and Roman architecture. In this time lapse, you can see me completing the walls of the throne room. I lined the tops of them with tiles so that the level above could be removed. Here's a look at what the finished room looks like. As I mentioned in the last videos, I built these front walls on hinges so they can swing out like doors, allowing for a better view of the inside. When that was done, I started building the floor of the king's chambers. Once the floor was done, I placed another spiral staircase leading up to the wizard's chambers on the 5th floor. Doing this gave me an idea of how much space I had remaining for the furniture that needed to fit in the king's room. The first piece of furniture I built was the king's bed. I wanted it to look more elegant than the beds in the soldiers' barracks, so I built a canopy for this bed. I also used earth green and sand green 1x1 tiles in a checkered pattern to look like a quilt on the bed. I wanted the staircase on the back wall of the room leading to the wizard's chamber to be kind of like a secret passage, so I decided to build it behind a bookshelf. To make the bookshelf move, I added a toothed plate above it so that it can be raised by a gear connected to a crank. I'll finish building that mechanism in the next update video when I build the wizard's chamber. After that, I started on a window bay for the king's room. I built this similar to the window bay of the dining hall, allowing it to slide out for easy viewing and access to the room. Lastly, in the left corner of the room, I built a small dresser. Once this was done, I finished building the rest of the walls, and then the king's chambers were complete. Here's what the finished room looks like. Let's start with the secret passage mechanism that I started building in the king's quarters. In this clip, you can see the gears that drive the toothed pieces which connect to the bookshelf below. Here's how the finished secret passage works. The bookshelf is raised, revealing the spiral staircase behind it. Next, I began building some of the details into the room like bookshelves. One of the bookshelves uses these book pieces from the early 2000s Lego Harry Potter sets, but the bookshelf in the middle of the room uses simple 1x2 plates that are turned on their side to represent smaller books. Here, at the end of this clip, you'll see me create an opening leading to a hallway which will connect the wizard's chamber to the grand spiral staircase on the front of the castle. I decided to start building the staircase before I finished the wizard's chamber so that I would know how tall the ceilings of that room would need to be. I began building the staircase separate from the castle, using hinges and round 1x1 bricks to allow me to create the unique angles of the staircase. Once the stairs were built, I attached them to the front of the castle. In this state, when they weren't connected, the stairs were extremely delicate. They actually only attach by one stud on the top and one stud on the bottom of the stairs. Despite this though, they actually are rock solid once they're connected, and they rest quite nicely on the castle structure below them. Once the staircase was in place, I began building the garden that extends from the side of the castle. Then I was able to finish the walls of the wizard's chamber. Since the ceiling was so tall, I wanted to add some detail and realism here, so I incorporated wooden support beams into the ceiling. I then finished the floor of the wizard's chamber with sand green and earth green tiles in a checkered pattern. Here's a look at the finished room. The next details I added were some tiles which I arranged to look like paving stones. These allowed me to place the tree on a rotating plate and connect the tree at a more interesting and natural looking angle. Some of you may recognize this tree as the bonsai set from the LEGO Botanical Collection. However, I modified the tree with these olive green plant pieces I picked up from the Pick-a-Brick wall at my local LEGO store. To continue this natural look, I placed the tree in a way so that it looked like it had roots overgrown and hanging off the side of the castle. In these next clips, you can see me adding some more olive green plant pieces to extend this natural and overgrown vine look down the front of the castle as well as the backside of the MOC. This also gave the castle a pop of color to break up all the gray stone and provide some contrast. Here's a shot of what the finished sacred garden looks like. After that was done, I finished building the ceiling of the wizard's chamber, which will also act as the floor of the sacred gold temple that I build in my next video. In this first time lapse, you can see I started by building the entrance of the temple. I added torches to the entrance using the same technique I used on other sections of the castle. Here you can see I used these 2x2 round bricks to create a series of pillars and arches to give the room a grand and elegant look. For the floor, I used sand green and dark green tiles like I've used in the other rooms of the castle. Since it's supposed to be a sacred temple, you can see I also added various gold decorations to further the elegant look of the room. On the front of the castle, you'll see here I created a balcony. Moving to the backside of the castle, I built the wall on a hinge allowing for access to the interior of the temple. Here's a look at the finished sacred temple and the sacred garden level of the castle. Once this level was complete, I lined the tops of the walls with plates and then I built the floor of the next level. This level will consist of a treasury and a balcony large enough for the dragon to perch itself on and guard the gold in the treasury. In this clip, you can see I built some gray stone statues holding torches outside the archway leading to the treasury room. Moving on to the front side of the castle, you can see I incorporated more decorative 2x2 pillars around the windows of this wall. To add detail to the side facing the sacred garden, I added more windows using a combination of inverted slopes and arches. From this view, you can also see where I connected the front wall on hinges so that it can swing open just like the level below it. Again, this will allow me access to the interior of the treasury. On the final wall of the room, I added some simple arches at the top to add some depth to the wall. Once all the walls were done, I lined them with tiles and began decorating the inside. I started by adding sand green and earth green tiles and then placing various piles of gold and other various treasures throughout the room. Here's a look at the finished interior. Next, I had to figure out how I would balance a dragon on the perch to guard all the gold in the treasury. For the dragon, I thought the Hungarian horntail dragon from the LEGO Harry Potter series would be the perfect size and style for the MOC, but I did have to make a few simple modifications to the dragon.
Since I removed the dragon from the brick-built stand that normally supports it, I had to figure out another way for the dragon to support its own weight. So to solve this problem, I modified the tail by adding this 1x2 brick with a Technic pin connecting it to the back wall of the castle. Just this one connection holds up the entire weight of the dragon, and it looks really natural without having to use a stand to hold it up. To complete the dragon, I connected some chains to this bendable spiky Technic piece to make it look like he was wearing some sort of collar. Then I placed a Dragon Rider minifigure on the dragon's back to control the beast. Here's a finished look at the dragon on its perch guarding the treasury. In this first part of the time-lapse, you can see I started by tiling the walls of the level below it. This will allow me to make the tower modular just like I made the main castle. Since the castle's so tall, this is going to allow me to transport it to shows much more easily. Once I had the floor built, I began building the jail cells of the dungeon. The pieces I used as cell doors are clipped into the walls, allowing them to swing open and closed. Once those were in place, I began building the walls of the cell. You can see I even added some window openings for the prisoners to look out of. On the outside of the tower, I built these decorative arches. On the inside, a ladder will lead up to the next level. Before I built the floor, I lined the walls of the tower with tiles again so that I would still have access to the interior of the dungeon. Then on this level, I decided to add some more colors and interesting shapes to the tower by building some wooden and thatched structures. On the side facing the port, I used snot bricks to attach 1x8 brown tiles in a half stud offset pattern, and then I left 2 openings on the front of the structure for archers to be positioned in. I then built a simple roof on top with the same pentagonal tiles I used for my other roofs on the castle. I tried to make this tower even more interesting looking by building a thatch structure at an angle on this side. I used a hinge on the bottom to connect the structure to the tower. After that, I built up the walls of the tower and then began building the thatch structure itself. I used a similar technique to the one I used on the barracks and the inn. This time, however, I attached these round quarter circle tiles to create this cool looking wood design on the front of the structure around the window. I then built a roof that sat on top of the structure using the same 5-sided black tiles as before. At this point, I was starting to run low on gray brick, so while I waited for a pick-a-brick order to arrive, I decided that I wanted to add some life to the ocean by building another ship. I wanted this ship to closely resemble a Viking ship, so I found the perfect design on rebrickable.com, which was created by Jonas Cram. I just switched up the color scheme a bit and followed the free PDF instructions that he provided. Once the ship was finished, I decided to further the fantasy theme by making the boat into an orc trading ship. I handcuffed some prisoners that the orcs had captured to the ship, as well as added some pigs and goats that the orcs could trade in exchange for weapons created by the Dragon Knight's Blacksmith. In this first clip, you can see that the height of the castle forced me to remove the modular treasury level from the MOC so I could build more easily on my desk. At this point, the castle was over 4 feet tall and was resting on a 3-foot tall table. The first thing that I built on this level were the stairs leading to the observatory level. Once the stairs were in place, I used the remaining space to build a wooden arbor for more vines and vegetation to grow from. The arbor is built from fence pieces connected to snot bricks. I then covered the exposed studs on the front with brown tiles. Once that was built, I began building the removable wall with windows so that I could access the inside of the archives. Then I built the other permanent walls of the room. In this clip, you can see the finished archives complete with scrolls and a scribe minifigure. On the garden outside, I added some olive green vine pieces to the wooden arbor, and then I added lavender flower blossoms for even more pops of color on the otherwise boring gray castle. At this point, I decided to make another wood frame thatch structure for the observatory and the general's war room. So to achieve this look, I attached brown half arches to snot bricks to make it look like the room was resting on wood support beams. Then I lined the floor of the top level with brown plates to make a wooden floor. These curved fence pieces made for an awesome looking observation balcony. From there, I built the structure like the rest of the thatched buildings I made in my previous videos. Like the other buildings, I staggered 1 stud wide brown beams throughout the walls of the room. Then I finished the building with slope bricks that allowed me to place a roof on top. The roof even has a cutout for a fireplace chimney. Here's a look at the finished interior of the war room and observation balcony. After I finished the top level of the main tower, I still needed to finish the side tower. I decided to make the top level of this tower a lighthouse. To start, I had to create a floor with some 45-degree angled plates to match the angle of the thatch structure below it. Then I built a 2-brick tall railing around the edge and lined it with tiles. At this point, I decided to make the roof a really challenging but unique shape by making it 6-sided. To do this, I placed these 2x2 tiles with a stud in the middle, which allowed me to rotate these 2x2 pillars at various angles and achieve the hexagonal stone structure that would support the roof. From here, I assembled these black plates in various shapes and sizes. Then I lined them with 1x1 black tiles to look like shingles. Here's a look at the finished lighthouse being manned by the Dragon Knight crossbowmen. Once the side tower was done, the final thing I wanted to add to the MOC was a fishing hut on a tiny island near the shipwreck. I used what few dark gray slope pieces I had remaining to create the small island. From here, I built wooden supports with brown 1x1 bricks underneath the dock and the fishing hut. You can see that I wanted to give the fishing hut an interesting look by placing it at a weird angle and giving it a unique shape. Here's a look at the completed fishing hut, including a fisherman unloading his most recent catch from his boat, a dock worker mopping the wooden dock, and a small child with a fishing pole. With that final building, the entire MOC was now complete. Here's a quick look at the completed castle. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. In my next video, I'll be showing all of the details that bring the Dragon Knight's castle to life. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you're looking forward to more videos. See ya!